Hi, welcome to The King is Coming. My name is David, and we are here to talk about that again today. The fact that the King of Kings is coming soon. That is what my last video was on, and I've actually done that topic that the last video was on several times, but as I'm wanting to do videos just to focus in on that one thing and to try to wake people up to that possibility, I felt like that's really where I had to start if I was going to do that. But what I'm going to talk about today, as I mentioned in the last video, is where we are on the end times calendar, if you will, or where I feel absolutely certain we are as end times events are unfolding and as this is happening. And so just going to be really quick with this. Here we go. And as he, that is Jesus, sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and when shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and shall deceive many. And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, and pestilences, and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. That, my friends, is exactly where I think we are. Matthew chapter 24, verses 6 through 8. And if, looking at those things, I'm just going to go through these really quickly. First of all, I mentioned this in the last video talking about something else, but it's one of those things that all my life I've heard people talking about end times prophecy, and they'll talk about these very things and say, well, those things have always been happening. And to a degree, yes, that's true. Wars, famines, pestilences, earthquakes, they've always been happening. But really, when Israel became a nation again in 1948, you really have to evaluate things from that point on, because that was really kind of the clock starting as far as end times events happening. But if you look at this, you really have to look at what Jesus is saying. So let's kind of dive into that just real quickly. Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And he talks about you will hear wars and rumors of wars. Okay, well, have there always been wars and rumors of wars? Yes, there have. But I think Jesus is talking about something different here, because we can talk about wars all day long in terms of little territorial skirmishes between this country and this country, border, wars and things like that. But what we're looking at right now is there are at least half a dozen conflicts either currently happening or right on the verge of happening right now that are not just going to be little territorial disputes between nations. There are at least half a dozen things that could, escalate into a full-blown world war right now. To give you just a few of these, basically Israel versus its enemies, and that covers all kinds of different avenues you could take with that. The United States versus Iran right now. Ukraine versus Russia. Russia versus Poland and many of its other neighbors, which it looks as though Russia is, perhaps about to invade some of these nations. China versus Taiwan, and then a really small conflict going on that no one's really talking about much, except here on YouTube. I've seen people talking about it. In Guyana, with Venezuela threatening to invade over oil. All of these, any one of them could escalate into a world war. And that's totally different than that just these two nations or these two or three nations feuding over, land or a border conflict. Then Jesus talks about famines. There are certainly famines going on in the world right now. Some of which are because many rivers are drying up, and I've got a video on the Euphrates River drying up, but we'll talk about that in another video. Pestilences, which another way of saying that would be diseases. Can anybody think of any diseases that or viruses that have, spread over the last few years and gripped the entire world and made everyone afraid? Just saying. And they're already predicting the next one. It's almost like this is planned, but, I digress. And then in terms of earthquakes, I can't actually tell you there are a lot more earthquakes than there ever have been at any other time, although we seem to be hearing about them a lot more. But one thing, if you look at what Jesus says here, he says earthquakes in diverse places. A great example of that would be, I was looking at the United States Geological Survey, and it was saying that the two states in the United States that have had the least amount of earthquakes historically are Florida and North Dakota, diverse places. Florida had an earthquake, I think the largest they've ever had, last week. So this is where we are, my friends. This is what's happening. And the one that Jesus really seems to emphasize here is wars and rumors of wars. And again, we're looking at several conflicts right now that could become a major world war between dozens of nations that would affect the entire planet. And this is where we are. You need to get right with Jesus. And as I said in the last video, I'm going to have a link in the description box and in the comments to a video to tell you how to get right with Jesus and how to know you're right with God, so that when Jesus returns, you will be found worthy. And ultimately, there's no way we can be found worthy. We are all sinners. We are all deserving of God's wrath. But Jesus paid that price for us. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that through him the world might be saved. And all who call upon the name of the Lord Jesus will be saved. Please call upon him before it's too late. Thank you so much.